Hi, my name is Matthew Young, and I'll be going over the Buffer Overflow Attack Lab Server Edition. So to start, I'm just going to go briefly over the initial lab setup before we get into task one. So I went to the website and I downloaded the zip file for the lab setup from Seed Labs. And after that, I began compiling files, like the make files, and building the Docker containers. And I currently have them running as seen here. And then in a new window, I went ahead, or terminal, I went ahead and connected to one of those servers, or accessed one of them. In this case, I chose server 1, as seen by these commands here. And before we actually get to running the attack, we're going to go to task 1, which is running through and understanding the shellcode a bit better. So next, we'll be going over the task 1, which is going through the shellcode, make some modifications to that. So the modifications I made were to shellcode 32.py and 64. So what we did was we commented this out, and we also created this command line here. Basically, we want shellcode 32 to create the virus file in the temp folder. And then for 64, we did a similar modification here, where we want um, to delete that file at the same location. Now, it's very important to note this as well as messed me up a few times during testing, that there has to be, you have to space this out so this star lines up with this position marker right here. So it's very important, otherwise it won't work, which I found out the hard way. So now I already ran it all, but I'll run it all again. So we can go ahead and run the shellcode files, starting with 32. And we're going to do the same for 64. And we're going to compile them with the make file. So we created code files 32 and 64 here and here. And we also created a32.out and a64.out. Now, when we run a32.out, we should see a message saying that we created a virus file in the temp folder, and then we're going to go check, see if it's there. Then we're going to run a64, which should delete said file from the temp folder. So I'll run through that right now. So well, didn't mean to do that. We'll run dot slash a32.out. Okay, we got the message, create a file virus, but let's actually check if that file is in the temp folder. As you can see here, we got the newly created virus file. So now we're going to go ahead and delete it. So we can run dot slash a64 dot out. Okay, we got the message saying we deleted it, but let's actually check. Yeah, and as you can see, no more virus file. So that is pretty much all of task one, just making some slight modifications to the shellcode and showing that we can actually inject a file. We're going to be moving on to task two here in a minute. Okay, so now we move on to task two, which is the level one attack. Here in the um, attack code folder, we have the rootforce.sh and the exploit.py files. We'll be working on exploit right now. Uh, so first, we're going to send a message to the server so we can find the beginning of the buffer address and the EBP, which I have already done here. And the command for that, oh, it's right here. It is here. We're sending a message to the server, and then we hit Control C, and we see the results here. We have the EBP and the buffer address of the server. We send it twice to test out to basically demonstrate that the randomize
countermeasure has been disabled. If it was enabled, we would get two different sets of addresses, which would make this more difficult. We use the port 9090, that since that is provided by the lab guide. After that, I created the bad file with this command here, touch bad file, and then I sent the file to the server with this command here. Hit Control C and ended up getting this result from the server. As you can see, the input size 0, since the bad file right now it's empty, or at the time it was empty. This is basically to prove that we know we can send a file to the server, and we can move on to modifying the exploit file. So what we did to modify the exploit is we took the shellcode, which was previously blank, and I took it from shellcode 32. And basically the goal is we ultimately want to make a bad file and send it to the server so we can open a reverse shell with root privileges. To do this, we also have to modify the start right here by subtracting the length of the shellcode from the buffer size. We also set the return address and calculate the offset down here using the EBP and the buffer address we got earlier when we send messages to the server. Um, and then when we run /exploit, we copy the shellcode basically and return plus the return address into the bad file. So I'll run that real quick. Okay, so um, you can see here too that the address size is, the size of the bad file is 517. And now let's try and send it to the server. And here we actually get that message, create a file virus, that we saw before in task 1. And we can also go ahead and check to see in the temp folder to see if it's actually there. And there we can see the virus folder right there, or file. So now we know that this works. We want to open a reverse shell instead of just making a virus file. And to do this, we have this command right here that will help us create a reverse shell. This is provided by the lab. The only modification is actually using my IP instead of just a random one, which can be found by running a quick IP address command here and using the inet right here. So I'm going to go ahead and uncomment that and comment out the file creation line. So before we send it and test it out, we want to make a TCP listener, which I'm going to do here, this command on port 9090, and we're going to check for new connections. Okay, so we got that one running. And I'm going to recompile the exploit since we made a change. Oh, spelled it wrong. Okay. Send it over. Okay, so I had to make a quick change. It did not work, but I kind of realized why. I forgot to actually save the changes I made to exploit.py, so that's why that didn't work. Had to quickly go through and figure out why that wasn't working. But made this, actually saved it this time, and I recompiled, sent the bad file back, and instead of getting that create a file virus message, we now have this. But more importantly, on that listener, you can see here that we've actually gained root access to the server. And this concludes task 2. We'll move on to task 3 in just a moment.
Okay, so now we're moving on to task 3, which is a level 2 attack. Um, and we started by exiting the server. Now, I had done this before. Unfortunately, the environment crashed, which was not good. So I had to restart some of the parts. I had to restart Docker, get the containers back up and running. But it's okay. We went ahead and we entered server 2 instead. And I did what we did last time. We started out by sending a message to the server. And when we got the response, we got this address here, the buffer address, but not the EBP address, which makes calculation a bit difficult. And I went ahead and made a copy of exploit.py and called it exploit2. Now I'm going to go over a couple of the changes, the important changes that I made. So, well, first off, we're starting with making a virus file just to see if it works before going straight to the reverse shell. We changed the calculations for the return address as well, since we did not have the EBP. And for the offset, we're actually running this part of the script right here, which is going to be running the code multiple times with different offset values. And it's essentially just guessing until one of them hopefully works. Now, I'd done this before the environment had crashed, and I'd gotten the results here. Now I'd have to go back and actually replace the shellcode with the shellcode from 64.py to delete that, then go back, get it from 32, and running again to recreate it and get the message that the virus file was created. Rather than do that, I'm just going to show the result here that in temp virus is there. But to prove that this all works, I'm going to go ahead and open the reverse shell now. So we're going to go ahead and comment this out. And I am going to uncomment that. Go ahead and save. Go ahead, compile. And now I'm going to go ahead and send over the bad file like we did before. We also got the TCP listener in the background as well. Okay, I made an attempt and it failed, but I realized why. I missed a important step. Because the environment crashed and I had to restart, that means that the randomizer safeguard was reactivated. So I had to go ahead and disable that again. And then I sent a few more messages out just to make sure I was going to get the same address, which I did. I have to make that change real quick in exploit and change that buffer address to that. Save it, compile it, send it over again. Now it works. Okay. So what I am going to go ahead and do is, as you can see here, we have the root privileges. Okay, so with task 3 complete, we can move on to task 4, which is a level 3 attack. Now, I've already run through some of the steps, but I'll go ahead and walk through what I did. Basically, we went ahead and we exited from server 2 and we moved on to server number 3. Uh, we connected, we started, not NCAT, sorry, we started, yeah, NCAT, the TCP listener, and we, we went here, we went ahead and sent a message to the server at this time with address 10.9.0.7, and we get this result right here. We get the buffer address, and we also get the frame pointer. Now, the difference with this one, this attack's gonna be a little trickier than the last because we're gonna actually have to take into account a 64-bit address instead of a 32. So we're gonna have to change like a lot of things with exploit 3, which is the name of the new exploit py file that we're gonna use. So as always, we're gonna start with trying to create that virus file, and then eventually we'll move on to opening a reverse shell. But first, we change the start value to 0 for this one. We also changed the return address to the buffer address, which we got earlier. And to calculate the offset, we subtracted the EBP, the buffer from the EBP, and we did that here. We got 208. So offset the offset to 208 plus 4. Oh wait, sorry, it should be actually 8 since we're in 64-bit. And also made the similar changes down here. Instead of 4, we use 8 here and here. Now I'm going to go ahead and save, and I'm going to go ahead and compile this exploit. And I'm going to go ahead and send the bad file over. Oh, that was the wrong server. Do 7. And we get the message, create a file virus. We can check. And there it is, the virus file, so we know we're good to move on. It works. We can try and open a reverse shell. So we're going to do that right now. Comment that out. Put this in. Make sure these are aligned. They are. That should be good. The TCP listener is listening. Gonna recompile. Oh, I forgot to mention. I'm not actually. I don't remember if I did mention or not. But the shellcode here actually came from the shellcode 64.py file, not the shellcode 32. Again, 64-bit address rather than 32. So I had to make that change. But yeah, now let's just say this I've compiled, and I'm going to go ahead and send it over. Okay, as you can see, once again, we got root access. And with that, the attack was successful, and this concludes task number 4. We'll move on to 5 in just a moment. Okay, so now we move on to task number 5, which is level 4 attack. And similar procedure as before when setting it up. Exit the previous server, connect to the last server, server number 4. I made a new exploit file for, let me make some changes. And the first thing to do is to send a message to the server so we can get that RBP and buffer address. which I've saved over here. Now it's still a 64-bit um, address, so we still keep the shellcode as is. And the first thing I did was to put in the virus file to see this works. As you can see, oh, actually, I haven't run it just yet. I've compiled, but I haven't actually sent it. But before I do, I'm gonna go through some of it. We changed the where the shellcode is in the payload. The last one was 0, but instead we're going to go back to the standard 517 minus the length of the shellcode. Now for the return address, we actually use the EVP plus 1200. Reason for this is when we calculate the offset, it is very small. It's at 96, and you can see here we set the offset to 96 plus 8 since it's a 64-bit address. And I want to go ahead and run it real quick, send it over, and hopefully create a virus file. Okay, I tried to run it, but it did not work. I realized that I don't think I compiled it again. I think I made some changes and forgot to compile. So ran it again, sent it over, ended up creating the virus file this time. As you can see, there it is. Now we're going to do the reverse shell. So make sure to compile this time. Have the TCP listener. And I'm going to send it. Okay, and there we go. As you can see, we got root privileges again, which concludes task 5 here. We're gonna move on to task 6 in just a minute. Okay, so now we are moving on to task 6, which is address. Is this countermeasure? We're going to be experimenting with one of the countermeasures, which is the address randomization. So first, I went ahead and I re-enabled it here, and I went ahead and connected to server 1 just to demonstrate that how the address changes each time you send a message to it. I demonstrated this like at the beginning of the video, I think. You might have seen a couple of them, or like I think midway through the video because I forgot to like disable it. But anyways, here it is again. So went ahead, sent the message to it 4 times. Each of those times, the address is going to be a little different, which makes calculating the offset kind of hard if it's constantly changing. Or yeah. So to get around this, we have this brute force.sh program here. And what this is going to do is it's going to be constantly sending the bad file over, and then hoping to eventually like line up with the correct address that's being like used, which could take a long time. So I'm going to go ahead and run it, and I'm going to come back when it actually finds the correct address or matches up. So I just do dot slash is brute force .sh, and I believe so. Yeah, this might take a while. I will be back when it has completed. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to cut this task short because I don't know why it's running so slowly. And I actually did the calculations based off another video I saw, which did this exact same lab. He needed to get about 51,000 runs. He did this in about 6 minutes and 54 seconds before he actually got the brute force attack to work. Now, I tracked that about at 2 minutes and for 2 minutes and 30 seconds of runtime. Um, I think I managed to get 500 runs. So if you do the math on that, at this rate, I think at least, it's going to actually take about 4 hours and 15 minutes to get to 51,000 runs. And it's not even guaranteeing that we're actually going to hit it at that rate, at that like many runs. But suffice to say, this is just kind of unfeasible to run that long. But the basic idea is like eventually it would work, it would hit the right combination, but I just do not have the time to run it that long. I don't know why this environment is being so slow right now. I think the guy in the video was using a different environment or his own personal VM instead of CyberRange. But yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to cut task number 6 short here.